I'm Sheila. I'm Signet's CEO. I've been with the company for 16 years now. And it's been year after year of doing what I love. And every month we take some time to make sure I get to share some of that enthusiasm with you all because I think enthusiasm is not necessarily how most people approach the college process. So I want to spread a little bit of joy and reduce the stress and give you some insight into how you can move through this process with less stress and more success, as I like to say. So just a couple housekeeping notes. We are recording this. Don't feel like you have to take notes, but as an educator, I do know that taking notes helps you process the information you're getting and will help you remember it better. So, you might want to grab a pen and paper. If you have questions, feel free to put it in the chat. I'm definitely going to need some breaks to have a little bit of water, and that's a great time for me to check the chat. But also, I've saved time towards the end here to go through your questions. So if it's not something I address in the presentation, we'll make sure to come back to that. And then I just want to encourage you to think of this as sort of your safe space. Of course, don't feel like you have to give me details of what's going on with your student, but everyone who is here tonight is in the same boat. We are worried about navigating through college admissions with a teenager who may or may not be on the same page as us. And maybe that changes every minute or every other day. So I have a lot of compassion for what you're going through. Everyone in this room has a lot of compassion for what you're going through. So don't feel like there are any stupid questions. If you're worried about it, chances are someone else is worried about it too. So go ahead and ask. With that said, I'm going to share my screen and take us through a presentation, which is here. Yes. Can y'all see me? Someone on screen, give me a thumbs up. Great. Okay. And I'm going to move your beautiful faces over here so I'm not looking off to the side. Okay. Tonight we're here to talk about the early blueprint for a winning college strategy. And we've got two happy kids who are in high school. And this is what I want for all of you. Happy kids, not stressed out, not mom, why are you nagging me about this thing? Not, oh my gosh, I have no chance. And there's a sense of impending doom. None of that. We want happiness, right? They're growing young people. They deserve some happiness in their life before the adult world squishes it out of them. And what I hope to show you tonight, I believe, is a blueprint for a fulfilling life after college, not just getting into college. So I hope that you find this helpful. This is really material that's very near and dear to my heart. With that said, let's go through it by starting with what's going to happen in senior year. If your kid is in fall of senior year, this is what they got to put together. They need a college list to know where they're applying. And there are all sorts of recommendations about how many reach schools, how many target, what is a safety, how do you read the numbers? We've got this whole mess of college list, which also includes like, what do you want to study? And does this college have it? And is this the area of country you want to go to? A lot to do there, right? You don't have to submit that college list, but you do need it to guide your actions. Then we have all the application forms. They're going to ask you a lot of demographic information, where parents grew up and went to school, what they do for a living, who else is in the household. You're going to have to put in, information about your high school and who the counselor is and things like that. You might be applying for financial aid, which is a whole other set of paperwork and lots of changing rules about that. You've got to list their extracurricular activities and work experience and volunteer stuff. So that means they need to be doing it over the course of high school. So they've got something to put on this list. You've got essays. There's the main personal essay, which everyone always thinks that's the only thing that's part of the college process. Actually, there's a whole lot more. There's more than even just that one essay. There's supplemental essays too, right? And not every school requires them. That's why there's that little asterisk there that sometimes you'll have extra essays to write and sometimes you won't. And some schools will ask you 3 questions and some schools will ask you 8. Sometimes those questions will overlap and sometimes they won't. Then you've got teacher recommendations. So they got to build some relationships and make sure teachers know who they are, what their goals are. So that can end up in the recommendations. Some schools require test scores. If your student is a good tester, you may want to submit test scores even if they aren't required at that school. So there's a whole process for that. Transcripts reflect the classes that they've chosen and the grades that they've earned. So there are also processes for that, right? And then some schools will also have an interview, which your students need to be prepared to talk about themselves. And that's not something they've ever had to do before. So you guessed it, there's a process for that. Now, I am purposely trying to overwhelm you, okay? You might be like, wait, this isn't the Sheila I know. It's on purpose, right? And the purpose is to get you feeling some feelings so that we can examine them, okay? So I've got 5 choices here. I'm sure there are a million more other feelings and concerns that I could put up here. But give me in the chat a sense of what you're feeling right now. Are you like, oh my God, I'm behind, or I didn't even know about that thing. What is that? Are you taking it in, but not sure where you should focus? What's the priority for your kid at their age level? Or are we just thinking like, okay, now I know I got to do, we're going to do it all because we don't know what's going to be the thing that gets them in. Or are you more of an empath right now, being like, oh my God, I got to put my kid through this? Why does it have to be so hard? And most of you probably feel a little bit of everything, which totally normal. But it says a little bit about how you think, not the kind of person you are, the parent you are, not at all, but how you think about a challenge, thinking about, all right, how are we going to respond to all this overwhelming information Sheila just told me that maybe I was supposed to start this process like a year ago. And now there's maybe no way for me to catch up, right? I'm going to give you a minute and I'm going to take a sip of water to put some more answers in the chat. I got a couple of responses, but I know there are more people here than just the 2 who responded already. Got a couple of D's, a C. C is really common, Aaron. Another D. Yeah. Man, we're feeling for our kids, right? Um, and as much as we're feeling for them, we also know it's got to get done, right? We want them to go off if you've decided college is the right next step for them. We want them to be able to go through this process with our confident leadership and support, not feeling like they're behind the 8 ball, right? That they have no chance, right? And what I want to point out for all of you, and thank you, those of you who did respond in the chat, you can continue pondering this, is that these feelings that I've called out, and probably most of the feelings that you're feeling, even if they're not on this list, are coming from a place of insecurity, right? There's already an assumption we've done something wrong, or we missed something, or it's not good enough, right? And call this the ugly truth. I put it in black to reflect my feelings about it. The mainstream culture around college admissions encourages a weakness-based approach. It makes you focus on what you think your weaknesses are, makes you evaluate your child, yourself, from this place of I'm not good enough. Okay. We ask questions like, is my kid behind or are we behind? Did I miss something? Is the score or GPA good enough? What major is easiest to get into? And the thing that's not being said there is my kid's not good enough to get in the hard way or to go for something difficult. So we need the easiest path in, right? And it's holding up this very abstract ideal, but also abstracted, disconnected from reality as a goal, and tries to measure everyone against that really idealized picture, right? It's disconnected from the reality of who your student is and all the great things they bring to the table and what maybe even what they want to do. And it is disconnected from how college admissions actually works, right? So that is not a model that's serving you. Let's take a little bit of a deeper look here. Is my kid behind? But what timeline are you imagining here? Right? I know plenty of people who took a gap year after college, who took time off in the middle of college, or who went to college to study something and then realized a little bit later on in life, like me, oh, wait, the wrong thing. I got to pivot. I got to do something else. I'm going to go back to school, whether that's, grad school or maybe even another bachelor's. I know plenty of people who've done additional bachelor's. So there is no one timeline that leads to success. Where is the timeline you're imagining coming from? And is that actually serving you? Is that connected to some reality? Is the score or GPA good enough? Well, let's get specific. For what college and what program and what else is going on in this student's profile, right? That's not the only thing that a decision is based on. And so good enough is sort of a goalpost that is always moving, right? So I encourage you to stay away from that kind of thinking. And then what major is getting in is easiest to get into? Well, it depends on school. It depends on the program. What kind of preparation does your student have, right? If you've got a lifelong dancer and they want to study dance, well, maybe that's the easiest thing for them to get into, and not, um, I don't know, anthropology. Who knows, right? I'm making it up, but there are a lot of different ways to answer these questions. And the best way to answer it is with the reality of your student in mind and what their goals are, right? So, this is what we're going to do today. We are going to talk about a strengths based approach as opposed to this weakness based approach that we are way too familiar with, right? So, I'm going to give you a really good description of what a strength based approach might look like and how I do it with my students, how my team does it with our students. We're going to talk about a tool that I call the match pyramid, which I find more and more uses for every day. Where it comes from, it is based on a lot of data, and I want to show you that so you have some trust and confidence in it. And then how you can use it as your early blueprint for a winning college strategy. See how I tied that back? Right. Let's get into it. I know we did a lot of gloom and doom and I stressed you out. So now we're just let's all take a deep breath, let go of all of that weakness, and be ready to receive some new information. Right. The first thing I want to point out for you is that college admissions is selective, not competitive. Okay. And these two words mean slightly different things. Competitive means the best is going to get in, whatever the best happens to mean, maybe the highest GPA or the highest test score or the most extracurriculars or awards. So our instinct becomes to maximize every piece of that college application list that I gave you, right? But this doesn't work. Every year, I'm sure you've already heard of several early decision results are coming back last week and this week, and you're like, oh my God, if they couldn't do it, how is my kid going to do it, right? But the most selective colleges can fill their classes several times over with like the best, right? Valedictorian, perfect score, the most impressive extracurriculars. They started a nonprofit, whatever it might be. They can't accept them all. They can't. So while they may have high standards, they are still selecting the people who are the right fit, right? So it's not about this wasn't enough, it wasn't good enough, they didn't do enough. It's that it wasn't a match. And sometimes that can be really painful to hear, especially if you're, a 17-year-old on the receiving end of a decision. It can be really, really painful to hear, right? But this is truly how college admissions works. They are looking for matches, not necessarily the best, okay? And best is subjective. What does that even mean? So think of it like a portfolio. Now, if you've ever had to apply to some sort of portfolio-based job or program, you might know you're not trying to be everything to everybody, right? You're not creating everything you think anyone could want. You are thinking about, okay, this is what I do really well. Let me find the right opportunities that want what I have to offer, right? And you might massage your portfolio a little bit to emphasize or lead with the things that you're really good at that they're going to appreciate. This is what they're looking for. So you're going to lead with that stuff, right? That's how college admissions should work from your side, right? Like, here's my kid, here's what they're really good at. We're going to find the colleges that want those things, and we're going to show them how good of a fit we are, right? And to take you back just for a moment to that weakness-based approach, we usually start the other way around. We say, oh, I have to go to this school. That means my kid has to be like this. So let me mold and shape them and constrain them and force them to do this so that they look this way. And then, Stanford will accept them or Princeton will accept them or whatever the school might be. Right. But you're doing yourself a disservice there, and you're creating a lot of unnecessary stress, right? I'm not going to say that that never works. There are definitely companies and advisors out there, that's the way they work. They say, no, you've got to fit this mold, and we're going to do this to the max, and that's how you're going to get into this school, right? But research shows, and I very strongly believe from my own experience, that doing it that way is setting your kid up for a lifetime of this weakness-based approach, right? Where they are continually denying something they know to be true about themselves in order to please someone else, a hiring manager, a boss, a program administrator, whatever it might be. And I know you don't want that for your kid, right? We can still have a great education that opens all the doors that you want open to your kid without training them to deny themselves in this way. Right. And that's why this approach that I'm going to show you can be so empowering, in addition to enabling a lot of success in those traditional measures, right? In terms of getting into this college or that college. All right, let's go into what that actually looks like. Okay, I got some steps here. This is very high level. You're not going to do this in a day. Okay, so, I wanted to give you a sense of it. But of course, this is a process that takes months, years, lots of conversations, lots of trust, right? Lots of iteration. But the first thing we're going to do is start with the student. We are going to work to identify their strengths, right? Where they are right now, not like, oh, I know they could if they applied themselves, like who they are really right now. Okay. Their strengths, the things that they're naturally interested in, their values. We'll talk a little bit more about this. Preferences for the kind of people they want to be around, who they want to learn from, how they want to learn, right? Do they like reading books and listening to lectures, or do they want to like get their hands on something and tinker and figure it out, right? Do they want to work in groups, or do they want to, be on their own doing independent studies? What are their needs, right? This might be as clear as, okay, we've got some dietary challenges, and I got a student right now who's got this terrible condition. She needs to be able to prepare her food in a very specific way, but also eat it very slowly and then walk. And like, it's a whole thing, but it is absolutely crucial for her to be able to function. And so she needs to be able to go to a place where she has her own kitchen and can have somewhat of a flexible schedule so that she can do what she needs to do to stay healthy. Right. And we've got other kids who've got celiac or maybe religious limitations on what they can eat. But needs could also be, we need a little more academic structure, right? Maybe they need to have a really robust learning center where they can go and, find peers to work with, or have some additional scaffolds around getting things done. Sometimes they need really good pre-medical advising, because that they're sure that that's the thing that they want. So let's make sure we've got a great pathway and great track record, right? And then long-term goals, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but it could be a career, like a path that they want to follow. But it might also just be like, here's the kind of person I want to be. I want to live in a city. I want to help people. I want to, have this kind of impact, right? It doesn't have to be so precise, right? But like some sort of guiding vision for a future. And then we're going to work to develop the things that we know are going to help them get to those goals, but of course are also going to help them get into a college, right? We want to do what we can to keep their grades as strong as possible. Not everybody needs a 4.0, but if your student is capable and motivated around it, that's the thing we're going to want to do. A lot of the times this involves strengthening executive functions so that they can sort of study smarter and be a little bit more organized, because they've got the brain power, right? We just need to show them how to apply it. We want them building relationships that foster their growth around the things that they care about, right? And this doesn't mean every friendship has to be like a mentoring relationship, but we do want mentors in their life. We want them to understand themselves better through the relationships they have, the friendships, the teachers, the coaches, whoever else is in their life. And we want them to gain exposure and experience in their areas of interest, right? So I got a lot of kids who are like, I want to work in an investment bank. And I'm like, you were 12 years old. What do you even know about this? And so, instead of saying, no, you don't, or saying, yes, you absolutely do, let's go on that path, I want them to get some experience and exposure. So, like, who do we know who works in an investment bank or who did at one point? Can you sit down with them for half an hour and ask them, what does your day look like? What are you doing? And see, does that resonate? Is it worth doing a little more work in this area, right? Maybe then there is a summer program around finance or something like that, right? Or maybe you get one of those online learning modules around like building really powerful spreadsheets, because that's going to be a huge part of their life if they are going to go into that field, right? So helping them build some skills, gain exposure, but always checking, are we still on the right path? Is this thing that you thought you wanted the thing you wanted, right? And it could be around a career, it could be around I like doing this thing as a hobby. It could be, I know my own writing skills are not as strong as I want them to be. So maybe that's the experience that I want to get, like more experience writing. Maybe I need to read more or something like that, right? So think creatively about this, but we are developing as young adults. And then we take the step to map who they are to a college, right? So it's going to involve a lot of research. I'll show you a little bit about this in a moment. But we want to find that right academic opportunity, but also the right environment, right? The social atmosphere, the location. I grew up in Michigan. I thought I would be totally fine at a place that was cold. But when I got there, I was like, wow, I was so wrong. I need to be in Southern California, which is where I live now. So there are things like this that we think, oh, we'll power through. It will be fine. But sometimes those things can really have an impact on quality of life, and will show up in their grades and academics. So you want to keep that in balance. You also then want to research the admissions priorities of the school, the average GPA, SAT score, whatever it might be, so that you can understand, like, okay, where do we line up and where do we not? And you want to practice identifying those areas of like just beautiful puzzle piece fit, right? I don't have an example prepared for this, but as you do this research, students are going to respond to things that they're seeing on campus or they're seeing on the website, they're hearing about from the conversations they're having, and they will be able to envision themselves doing that thing right away. And that's a great signal. You want to go with that, right? Sometimes they may not see it. You might have to help them see how this could play a role in whatever their future goal is. But wherever you do identify those areas of fit, you gotta write it down. Because I promise you, when things get hectic and you're writing all the essays, you're going to forget it. So write it down somewhere and then you can refer to it. But this is not just a linear process. You are going to jump back and forth between these steps and kind of be doing the discovery process all through high school. I mean, I'm still discovering my strengths and values and needs and things like that. So that's a lifelong process, but it's going to unfold. And if you've got a ninth grader, you might be like, wow, they have no idea what these things are. But if you've got an 11th grader, maybe they're starting to understand that, or maybe they understand it really well. Right. So maturity is going to play a role in this. So you always want to keep that conversation going. And then I'll show you how we think about, all right, what's the match with the college? And if there's a gap, how do we bridge it? Or does it mean that college is not a fit? We'll talk about that in a moment. I'm going to pause for some water. Do we have any questions? Or is this making sense? Yeah, great. Thank you, Caroline. Appreciate it. Okay, here's the framework. This is how we figure all of this out. Um, and it's not just for building a college list, which I'll show you in a moment. The match pyramid is a tool that I created to help you evaluate the match. But first, to do step one of discovery. Okay, there are three layers. It's very, very simple: academics, values, sometimes I'll say character, and then something I call the remarkable factor. If you've been to one of these webinars before, you might have heard me talk about this. So uh, it is a pyramid because some things are sort of foundational to others. But just like those steps I gave you, these can all be worked on at the same time. And sometimes you'll work on, one and then skip to another. So it's not like we only do academics first and then we do values and then we figure out the remarkable factor, right? These are fluid in contrast to how the diagram kind of shows it. So academics, pretty straightforward. These are the grades. These are the classes your student has chosen, in terms of like, do they reflect their interests, but also what level are these classes at? Like, how rigorous are they, right? APs, IBs, honors level. What are we talking about? How much is your student challenging themselves? And in those challenges, how have they fared, right? The grades kind of reflect that, right? So when colleges look at this, they sort of separate out the grades from the rigor of the classes and they evaluate them separately. But these are things you should be thinking about as you're moving through high school, right? How do we find the appropriate level of challenge? It's not always take the hardest possible thing and just knock your head against the wall. You want to challenge yourself and you stretch, get out of your comfort zone a little bit, but we also want to make sure they're successful in these classes. So that's a balance and nuance that only you and your student are going to know. In this layer of the pyramid, we also have test scores. So if testing is going to be part of your student's application portfolio, this is what it's reflecting, is their academic abilities. Not that a test actually tells you anything meaningful about IQ or intelligence or anything like that, but it is just a measure that some colleges still use. And then I put executive functions in here as well because they enable the performance in the grades and the tests, and they are explicitly asked about on the college application. Teachers will comment on this. There's a checkbox for them to say academic, disciplined habits, and things like that. So if this is a struggle point for your student, it's worth investing some time and energy in strengthening them, and there are ways to work on this. Then we have our values layer. Values are personal principles that guide your behavior and your actions. So you may have a goal, but your values are going to tell you what paths are acceptable to you to pursue that goal, right? If I want to be a millionaire, there are lots of ways I can do that, but my values are going to dictate that I do it in a certain way, right? Like above the board, ethically, I don't want to exploit anybody. I don't want to hurt anybody, those sorts of things, right? I'm not going to break any laws. Those might be my values. Now, I'm not going to tell you what your values should be. I just want you to know that colleges do look to see what kind of character are we dealing with here. And there are lots of ways that they take stock of that. But your values can also be a really helpful compass in making decisions about, what does your future look like? How do I want to show up in this classroom? What am I learning from my friends? And what extracurriculars matter to me? What kind of community service matters to me? Right? So values are really helpful filter for opportunities, grounding for when you're, in a challenging situation will really help you navigate this. So we want to work on helping your student understand what their values are and what they want them to be. Like, what kind of person do we want to be? The remarkable factor, I have trouble defining very succinctly, but I'm going to try. This is something that's just like so special about your kid. You'll know it when you see it. I'll give you some examples. I have a student who I'm very good friends with her father, and I was describing this to him, and he's like, I know what hers is. And I'm like, okay, lay it on me. She likes to do people's nails. And I'm like, okay, you got to give me a little bit more. But I think he was exactly spot on. She likes to do people's nails on a Sunday afternoon in her garage. She spends 4 to 6 hours every week. Different people come in. They're not all her close friends. Sometimes they are teachers, people in the neighborhood, friends of friends, people she doesn't even really know. She doesn't take any money for it. She just loves doing it. She loves spending her time doing it. And they get into these conversations where, like any good nail technician or hair stylist, we're talking about problems, right? She's giving people a space to talk about what's going on in their life with somebody who has no stakes in whatever's going on. And it ends up being a real place where she finds like her cup is filled. right? And she may not be solving a problem for them, but she held space for somebody in their emotions. And she also got to do something that she thinks is fun. She's developing all these great, nail skills that she's using. She doesn't want to just do nails for the rest of her life, but this has helped her see she wants to be a nurse, right? And she like first started with like, oh, I really love this aspect of like personal connection and helping somebody. What are the ways I can do that? And we went through a whole bunch of different options, and now she's applying to nursing schools. I had a kid who just really loved a specific dish of food that is only really eaten at weddings. It's like a South Asian delicacy, and when he moved to the States, that sort of community just was no longer available to him. And so he just instinctively went about community, like creating it in his small school. And he was able to, I mean, we connected the dots like, oh, I really love this dish. Like literally everywhere he goes, he takes a picture of it. Um, but he loved all the things that were around the dish. And then he was able to turn that into a symbol of like what he's trying to create in his life and the kind of community he wants to be a part of. And he ended up applying to and getting into Dartmouth, who, if you guys know the school, they really want people who care about community, right? They're like up in the, in the mountains, they're a small school, and they want people who are just so invested in that community, making it better, being a part of it, contributing. And, he had the grades and the scores and all the other stuff, but like this, I believe, was the thing that really helped them see, oh, this kid is going to be a great addition to our class, right? So these are things that for me fall under the category of remarkable factors, not necessarily an achievement or a skill or something they've done or like an intellectual ability. It's just something that's so in their DNA, right? You can't deny it. And it often leads their applications. All right, I'm going to move ahead because I do want to leave time for questions. This is where it came from. All right. Now, I'm giving you data. I know it might be a little hard for you to see on your screen, but I'm giving you data that is publicly available. It comes from the common data set for each of these schools. I put this together because I know a lot of people care about these schools, whether they should or not. I will let you guys think about it. But you'll notice in this section, it's section C7 of each school's common data set. They list out all these different factors, and then the school responds, and this is like a government survey, it's from iPads. The school responds whether it is very important, important, considered, not considered. And I've marked for you where scores are now required. Princeton is going to start requiring scores for this year's juniors, right? So seniors, test optional, juniors, test required, okay? And what you can see here is academics are at the top for every one of these schools. I've sorted it, so the things that end up being very important are at the top of the list. The grade point average, the rigor. Then we have character. This is all those values, the personal qualities, right? And then recommendations and the essay are also reflections of that character and those values, right? And then we've got all the other stuff, right? Extracurriculars, which, sometimes tell you about academics or character, but also just like what are their interests. It sort of gets mixed as we go down below, right? But then there are things that like, none of these particular schools actually care about, but the schools that are on your list may care about them, right? So I'm just giving you this because sometimes I got parents who are like, oh, we have to go to Cornell. And I don't care what kind of person they are to get us there. But I'm telling you, these two things are not separate, right? Personality, character, values, what teachers say about them, what they say about themselves matter a lot to these schools, right? So it's not just a matter of me trying to like, I don't know, get you to eat your vegetables, right? This is a win-win, okay? And even if your student is not interested in any of these schools, which, there are plenty of schools that are great that, kids might like better. NACAC, which is the National Association of College Admissions Counseling, does a similar survey of its member institutions, which are public and private, large and small, selective and non-selective, right? And you can still see these same characteristics end up being in, considerable importance, right? These are all academic. Then we go into the character stuff, right? Which you can see This is moderate importance, but they're more important than a lot of the other things. And then we get to, all the rest of this. And I will point out test scores used to be at the top of this list. It used to be number 3 on the list. But since so many schools, still over 90% of schools are test optional, it has dropped considerably, right? But on a larger scale survey of all kinds of schools, we tend to focus a lot on like the 8 schools that do require it, right? But that's not representative of what's really going on here. Right. So that's a little bit about where the match framework comes from. There is also a lot of like developmental psychology behind this that, if you're really interested, give me a call. I'll talk your ear off. But to get back to like the point, the match pyramid is your early blueprint for all of these things, right? It's going to help you develop the candidacy, right? Make sure you've got the appropriate focus on academics and testing, right? Sometimes I got kids who want to test 5, 6 times to get a certain score, but actually they've got no extracurricular involvement. Guess what? The extracurriculars are going to matter a lot more than 20 points on the SAT. Okay. So make sure the focus is appropriate. It's going to help you prioritize for those of you who felt like, I don't know how to prioritize all this. It's going to allow them to demonstrate character. First, they have to know, well, what is the character I want to demonstrate? And then what are the opportunities that I can demonstrate that in extracurriculars with my teachers in the classroom, whatever else they want to do. It will help them think about those broader life goals for college and after, and then make the choices and set priorities, right? It is going to help them build a college list, which of course we know is got to be based on the candidate that they are becoming. You'll know what to look for on paper when you're researching a school. And paper, I mean like the website, but also in person when you're doing a tour, right? What are the snippets of conversation you're overhearing from people when you're talking to students or maybe even professors? Like, what are they talking about? What matters to them? And is that what matters to your student? Find and create your own ranking of the right fits. Don't just take someone else's word for it, right? Create your own ranking of where your student really wants to go. And determine your early application strategy, right? That's like the school that they love the most, where there is the strongest match. We're probably going to want to put in some early applications if they allow that. It will also help you craft the actual applications. Now, this is not something you need to worry about until summer after junior year, but we're going to start writing essays. We are going to think about how we're listing all of our activities. What's the description? What's the order we put them in? You're going to determine the positioning, right? Like the sum of all these things I'm telling the school. What does it say about me? What do I want it to say about me, right? How does my match pyramid show me that I'm a match for this student, this college? And how do I make sure that's reflected in all the materials I'm giving them, right? And also the voice of the student, right? We've got so many students who think that a college wants them to write in this like professorial kind of very stodgy, refined voice, but it sounds nothing like a 17-year-old. Their personality, their character cannot show through if they're not using language that's comfortable to them, right? This doesn't mean like try to write your best. Absolutely, try to write your best, but don't try to sound like somebody else. Ensure the coherence of this content and really focus on articulating the match between the student and the school. And I'm going to take you through this so you can actually see how it works in practice. I got a blank section for the student here, and we got a remarkable factor. Let's say, our student is a relatively strong student. They've applied themselves in school. They worked on their executive functions. We've earned a GPA of 3.8. They've taken advanced courses across STEM fields. That's really where their interest is. 1490 SAT, respectable score, yeah. Organized and disciplined. Okay, that's our academic layer. Obviously, there's more detail to this, but high level. As we've worked on their values, they're just so intentional and empathetic. They really care about making a difference, and they are really motivated by personal growth. This idea that like they can look within, think about who they want to be, and like strive for it, right? That is the thing that really gets them going. And this is a real student. As I worked with them, they just kept dropping in all these like philosophical texts. And sometimes they haven't read the text. They like saw, I don't know, an Instagram post that referenced Marcus Aurelius. And I'm like, you should read that. Or here's an essay that will help you understand what that guy was all about. And they've been really motivated by this and like the sense of like ethics, and nobody's talking about this, and like don't we realize as humans, like the kind of opportunity that we have to apply this like amazing brain and learn all of these amazing things about the world? And like, really, this kid is so excited by these sorts of conversations. It's been a lot of fun for me, as you can tell. All right, so that's our student. Now let's take a look at how this maps onto a college. All right. We look at the common data set for this school. Oh, look at that. Average admitted GPA is 3.8, right on target. Most students, and there is a section of the common data set that will tell you what kind of courses are required, like how many years of a foreign language or how many years of a science, what's required and what's recommended. Okay, so we can see from that most students have completed advanced math coursework. So is our student. Their middle 50% range of SAT students scores between 1430 and 1590. He is comfortably towards the top of that range. That's great. It doesn't mean there aren't people who scored better, right? But this is a good indication. Academically, the student can handle what's at this school. And this language comes from looking at the mission and values page of the college, from talking to students, from hearing from graduates and alums, like what really seemed to matter. What was the culture on campus, right? And a lot of this is like really exact language you'll recognize, transformative impact from a college website, right? That's like marketing speak about values. But, it's borne out in the conversations that this student also had and what they saw when they visited campus. They want to bring together a diverse community of creators, inventors, and leaders. They have adherence to the highest ethical standards. I'm sure you can see it, right? We're starting to see a lot of resonance, right? And then when we did the research into like, well, what is this college hiring for? What are they investing in? What new opportunities are coming up? Did they break new ground in a building, right? And what are they trying to encourage? What are the new initiatives, right? They recently established a Center for Ethics and Technology. They broke ground on a new interdisciplinary studies building, which also means like they're hiring faculty, they're hiring staff. Like a building is a really big investment, and they don't do it for fun. They do it to attract a certain kind of student, right? So now you can see this is a great match, right? And I don't score it. I don't say like it's 99% match. Like that is based in nothing, right? But this is a great match. It doesn't mean this kid is guaranteed to get into this school, but it absolutely means that this school should be on their list if it meets the other kind of prerequisites, right? It's an area of the country they really want to go to. It's the size of school they want to be at. They can afford it, right? All of those things, right? But I hope now you're seeing like how this works, right? We didn't find the college and turn the student into a perfect fit for the college. We helped the student grow in all the ways they wanted to grow. And then we found the colleges that were the right opportunity. And now we can see we're connecting these dots. Yeah. Okay. So that's just one example of like candidacy development, college list research, that kind of thing. But I also kind of want to go through like a broader way to use this, which is, really focus on that discovery. And every once in a while, not like every day, but maybe at the end of an academic semester or once a year, run this pyramid. How are we looking in academics? What are your values? How have they changed? What feels remarkable? And I will tell you, they don't know. They have no idea what's remarkable about them. And most parents are too close to it to also see. So this is where like an outside mentor, maybe a teacher, a soccer coach, or someone like me could help you all kind of reflect and figure this out. It helps if that person has perspective, has seen a lot of different kinds of students, right? Because then we really know what's special. And they are all special. It's just different kinds. So you want to go through that on some sort of rhythmic basis. And then think about, all right, where are their gaps? Do we not have a set of values that we're working against? Do we not even have a single value that we can name? Well, there's the gap. We got to work on it, right? But if you're at the stage where you're starting to evaluate some colleges and you see this college is a great fit on these two layers, but it would be helpful if we had a little higher test score, or it would be helpful if they had maybe more preparation around the skills that they're going to need, right? we can then start to bridge the gaps. It's not do everything, right? It's like, okay, where are the places where you're invested, you know you want to grow here, and the college is also going to value that. Like let's do that. So we bridge the gaps. Sometimes you're going to find that the gaps are just like too big, right? Either they're like, actually, we're starting at a 970 SAT and we need to get to a 1550. Like that's huge. I believe every student can do it. Do you have the time and will to do it? That's a different story, right? Is it going to be worth it? The opportunity cost might be really high there. Or it might be, your student really loves finance, right? And as you research the college, you're like, oh, wait, they don't offer a finance major. All of their business programs are about entrepreneurship, not finance. Ugh. What we want to do then is revise the goal, right? It's not a time to say, okay, you're like 2/3 of a fit. Let's shoehorn you in for this last third. It's well, this school is probably not a good fit for you. You could apply, but the likelihood of you getting in, if you're just talking about finance, or like a value that they don't love, like your kid really loves project-based work and collaboration, and they're all about independent study and like, research kind of on your own, not in a group. That might not be a great fit, right? So that's where we pivot, right? And we might want to say, okay, maybe different schools belong on this list. But it's all a learning opportunity, right? When you find those conflicts, you find those big gaps, then you actually get a little bit of a reality check and can say, oh, wait, I need to recalibrate. Okay, I think that's everything that I wanted to share with you. Contact information is here. The website has more on this topic because I do talk about this topic a lot. But you can also scan that QR code to do a free discovery call and kind of talk through what's your student situation, where are you feeling the most stress or concern, and what kind of help is out there. It's not always sign up with us. Sometimes it's I want you to go talk to this other person and take care of this with them, or maybe there's a lower cost option that is a better use of your budget around this thing, right? If any of you have talked to me, I've suggested things like that before. Okay, I'm going to leave this up in case you want to scan it or take down my email. But now I just want to open up for questions. So you can feel free to put it in the chat. I've got the chat box up, but also feel free to just come off mute and ask me a question. And we can go back to anything that I move through too quickly for you as well.
I have a question.
Please.
What's like in your experience the kind of average number of colleges that people apply to? I mean, you hear these crazy numbers like 75,
God.
and then of course, I guess I'm worried in our situation, we only have like three colleges that we really like so far. And obviously there's going to be more visits and more research and everything, but what's an average these days?
Yeah. Yeah, I will say when I started this work, 15 years ago, I always said aim for 8. But my recommendation now is 15 to 20. Yeah. Yeah. It depends, of course, it's all very nuanced. It's going to depend on like how selective the schools are that your student is applying to. Caroline, I know your situation. You are going to be applying to some very selective schools. So we really do want a good mix of um, reach schools, you know, target schools where they're right on the money. And then at least, I always say, at least two likely schools, which some people call safety schools, right? Like, not like that you think should be a safety, but that definitely like no brainer. We're going to college next year, right? And they should still be a match on those various aspects, right? Like they should be able to study what they want to study and be around the kind of people they want to be around, but it's just less selective. So, for my students applying to the most selective schools, I do say 20. And that's the maximum that the Common App will allow you to do with one student account. These kids who are doing more than that are finding like ways around it, that their high school counselors, I promise you, are not happy about. So sometimes it doesn't have to be that many. Like I said, if your student is not interested in these very, very selective schools. Or if we are so confident in our likely and target schools that, we're good with three reaches, that's fine, right? So I would say in your case, no less than 12, but it's probably going to be 20. Yeah. Martina, I see you put a question in the chat and you came on video. Do you want to ask it out loud?
Sure. I was wondering if the first 3 years of high school or the last 3 years of high school are the ones that are most considered.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's typically the later years of high school because that's when the student is in their most advanced classes. And that's going to be closest to a college class, even though we know they don't really, they're not exactly the same as college classes. They don't quite compare. Colleges are also, sensitive to a grade trend, right? Like some kids have a rough landing in freshman year.
Yeah.
They're figuring it all out. It's all very new, right? So they're going to understand if there's some like soft spots in the GPA coming from freshman year, but we really do want to see that they have figured it out and things are more consistent and stable going forward. So it's not like an automatic out if they got like a B in ninth grade or something like that, right?
Mhm.
But they are going to pay a little bit more attention to the more challenging classes, which tend to be in the later years of high school.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Claire has a question. If you finished your bite, um, she has two questions. You can stay off camera, just come off mute and ask us if it's easier than typing, Claire.
Sure. Sorry, I have two questions.
Uh-huh.
First question is that we actually based in California, but my son actually laid his eyes in the U Miami. So I
Oh,
was
okay.
just
Interesting.
wondering that the
Yeah.
why, what are chances that the you applying out of state, that
Yeah.
the university, especially that area, is really competitive.
Very. Yeah. Sure.
Yes, so that's
So,
number one. Number
okay.
two
Go
is
ahead.
that you're talking to everything is about that the great students with the great GPAs. That the what about a student doesn't have a great GPAs?
Yeah. There are a lot of them. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me first answer your question about out of state. Right? Out of state matters to public institutions typically. And you'll see this on their common data set, right? I told you actually, let me go back to that slide. State residency, right? These schools, some of them consider because they might have relationships with certain things or might have like state funding that makes them want to think about, helping the kids from their state. But typically, these, private institutions don't care about state residency. Um, they care in a sense that they want balance. Like they don't want everybody from one or two states, right? So there are a lot of people who talk about the like Montana advantage. If you're applying to Harvard, there's a very high acceptance rate from students applying to Montana or from Montana to Harvard, simply because there are not that many students applying from Montana, who are interested in going to Harvard, right? So let me go back to my question slide. Oh, I got to click through all my animations. Okay. So for a school like Miami is, a great example of an institution that is going to pay attention to where your student is coming from, but not necessarily discriminate against them because of it. Sometimes it might be a good thing, right? Now, there are going to be a lot of California applicants to a school like University of Miami, so you've got to think about some other angles. But and unfortunately, don't release data about how many applicants we got from this state and how many of them got in. So like you don't really know. But if we were talking about the other way around, let's say someone from Florida wanting to come to UCLA, right? That's absolutely going to make a difference, right? Or a University of Michigan, University of Washington, UMass Amherst. The acceptance rate for students from out of state are very different than the ones for in-state for these public institutions because public institutions have a mandate to serve the students of that state. Okay. So it's going to be a lot easier to get in if you are a local state resident to those public institutions. At the same time, okay, it's so mixed and nuanced, and I'm sorry if I'm taking you down a rabbit hole. A lot of those public institutions have funding challenges. right? Because there's just not enough funding coming from the state students, and they charge more for out of state students. So, especially if you're not applying for financial aid, you might have a better chance as an out of state student at one of these public institutions. Right. And in fact, there's been a lot of reporting around this for certain schools in the South that like are just taking so much more out of state students because they can charge them more and that helps them run their school. Right. So it's nuanced. And I can't give you like what are the chances, like a calculation. No one can. I know there are calculators out there, but they're just bullshit, right? But I think it's going to depend on those other aspects of the match. And then your second question is a really great one. I'm glad you brought it up that not everybody has a great GPA or a high test score. Sometimes they're just sort of in the middle and happy to be in the middle, right? And that's where something like the match framework can be very helpful because the colleges that end up in the news or the ones that everybody's gossiping about at your high school tend to be from this list where like you really can only go if you've got a great GPA and a great test score, right? And of course, I'm speaking off the cuff here, but in very reductionist terms, but there are a lot of excellent universities out there that would be a great match for a kid with a 3.1 GPA and no SAT score, or maybe a 1200 SAT score, or a 25 on the ACT, right? That might actually earn them a merit scholarship at some of these other schools. And it says nothing about the quality of those schools. It tells you a little bit more about the mission of those schools, right? And in fact, I'm going to take you on another little rabbit hole here of the research and the data. The data shows that students who go into one of these like top schools tend to come out with not a huge differential in their like earning potential, lifelong success, happiness, whatever. It's the student, and so the argument is sort of like, well, what are they really doing? They're like bringing in kids who are already successful. Like, what education is happening? What transformation is happening? They just graduated and they're just as successful as if they had gone anywhere else that wasn't so selective. The schools that take this as a priority, the Opportunity Insights Group, which is a joint research group between Harvard and Brown, did this whole study on mobility scores, and they assigned mobility scores to different universities. And Cal State, so I'm in Southern California, I'm really proud of this. The Cal State system is one of the top scorers on that because there are regularly students who come in with, what we would call these sort of middling backgrounds of academics. Maybe they're from poorer families as well, and they come out and they're totally transformed, right? Their earning potential, their career trajectory, like it has really launched them into another level. And so just because your kid doesn't have a great GPA doesn't mean like they're doomed. In fact, they might be a great fit for one of these other schools that can actually empower their success in a totally different way. Right. I hope that helps, Claire. Like, we don't all have to be aiming for the same 20 schools. In fact, let's not do that. Let's spread the love around a little bit and find the right fit for our school, for our kids. All right. I'll take one more question. I know we're almost out of time here. Anybody else? No? Okay. Well, you have my email address. I'm very quick to respond. I'm always happy to jump on a call and talk through things. So please let me know how I can help. My team is standing by as well. If you are interested in bringing on, someone like me to help you through this whole process so that you don't have to do all the research and the nagging and the whatever, we do make it fun for students. We are happy to help, whether it comes to, devising the strategy, working on executive functions, test prep, the essays, like we got it all over here. So please let me know how we can help. I hope you all have a great evening and we'll see you in the new year. All right, take care, everybody.